Smith Unleashed, brought to you by MTS Transportations at 800-640-6873 for reliable on-time delivery, compliance you can count on, round-the-clock support, superior communication, experienced logistics partners, and mention the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and get 20% off on your next shipment for all your shipping, trucking, and freight needs. There's only one business to call, and that's MTS Transportations at 800-640-6873. MTS Transportations, 800-640-6873. Welcome back to Dave Smith Unleashed. And boy, this is going to be another good show. You all heard part one with the great Steve Kim, and he did 2 shows with us a couple of weeks ago. So hang it in there for a part 2 here. And boy, we had great college football discussion in the first one. You know him from his boxing coverage, covers the National Football League and all. And he's not as big an NBA fan as he used to be, just like me. I am the same way as Steve. So let's bring it back on here. The great Steve Kim joining us again on Dave Smith Unleashed. What's up, Steve? And good to talk to you again.
Dave, what's going on?
You know what's funny as well? When the baseball All-Star game was on recently, I didn't even know it was happening. I turned it on. I said, the All-Star. Boy, when I was a kid, that was such a big deal. That was everybody watched. And I think a big reason, Steve, was because I don't like interleague play. You know, the American and National League never played each other except for the All-Star game and the World Series. And now it's all mixed together. I didn't even know it was happening, Steve. I've lost so much interest.
The Summer All-Star game all throughout the 80s and maybe early 90s for me, Dave, it really marked like, hey, we are truly into summer.
Yes.
Right? And it was special. And I agree with you, Dave, that back when we grew up, the only time we would see American League and National League intermingle were 3 opportunities. It was spring training, right? And then it was the All-Star game, and then it was the World Series. And there was a uniqueness to that. And when you create scarcity, that creates value. Well, look, we can make an argument that interleague play has actually been good for baseball. I guess. I think there's an argument that some of the uniqueness has gone from that. And I think a lot of the All-Star games, whether it's especially the Pro Bowl, right? But, Dave, here's the issue with the All-Star games. They've tinkered with them to a point. They're unrecognizable from when we grew up. And also, the participants themselves, Dave, back then took it seriously. They wanted to win. They wanted to play hard. And we're at a point now where they've had to tinker with it so much, it's not actually a real game anymore. Although baseball still looks like baseball. But, Dave, I get the sense with the modern-day athletes, they look at all of this stuff as an inconvenience on their time.
You know, Rick Barry told me about the NBA All-Star game back in the day. You know, he said, we used to play hard because we didn't make a lot of money. That $5,000 winner's share was huge. I mean, we played that thing life and death. It's not like today. These multimillionaires don't give a damn. We needed that extra check.
Dave, I remember one of the best All-Star games ever was the 86-87 All-Star game at the Seattle Kingdom. And Tom Chambers, who played for the Sonics, ended up winning the MVP. If you watch the last 10 minutes of that game, or last 5, guys were into it. They wanted to win. I mean, it became a game, and I think that's the game where Rolando Blackman hit like 2 late free throws with no time on the clock. It was very dramatic. And Magic Johnson absolutely made it a point to give Tom Chambers every opportunity to win the MVP. And the guys were into it. It was emotional. There was actual defense. You weren't getting easy layups in the last half of the fourth quarter. What they've done to that game is an absolute mockery, Dave. I'm not asking guys to dive on the floor like the 7th game of the NBA Finals. But, Dave, what they've allowed that game to become, I think, really is part of the erosion of the interest that I've had overall in the NBA.
Well, nobody listens to me, Steve. I've been saying for years, make it USA against the world, the United States against the foreign players. And there's so many great foreign players now, they might actually win the game when you match them up. So that'll get them to play hard. I think national pride being at stake. You don't want to lose to the foreigners. I think that's how they should format it.
Do you think they care enough, though, Dave? I'm just telling you, there seems to be this abject apathy with these guys. I really don't even know if they care.
Steve, let's talk, let's get back to college football here. USC and UCLA, the 2 local teams that we follow. We followed our whole lives out here following the Pac-10, Pac-12, and now I hate the fact that they're both in the Big Ten, and Oregon, and Washington are gone, and Cal and Stanford are playing in the ACC, and the Arizonas are in the Big 12, and I hate it that we don't have a Pac-12 anymore. But I'm looking at the Big Ten preseason predictions here, Steve. USC is picked to finish 7th with an over-under of 7 total wins. And UCLA, my God, they're picked to finish 15th with an over-under of 5 for total wins. So it looks like USC has had pretty good recruiting year. They might do fairly well. I think UCLA is in for a long season.
Dave, I want to ask this again. And I'm not really a Pac-10 guy like you are, but I'm a West Coast guy. I've lived in LA my whole. Was it really worth it to just destroy a great conference on the West Coast for this?
No.
I mean, and by the way, with the over-under, if Lincoln Riley does not hit the over, I think his job's actually in some jeopardy.
Me too.
And I know that they're recruiting well. They got a new GM, Bowden. They're trying to get bigger bodies. They're trying to remake the physical makeup of their team. But here's the thing. I don't think that's going to – look, I don't know how many young interior linemen are ready to play Big Ten or major college football right off the bat. This has to be kind of a long-term plan where you physically get bigger bodies, body types matter, and you physically develop them, and then they're ready to play by the end of the second, third year. I don't know how many guys are ready to be Anthony Munoz right off the bat. I think it's a big year for USC because in year number 4, when you're Lincoln Riley coming off the track record you had at Oklahoma and what you're getting paid, you're supposed to be moving this thing forward, not backwards. Now, for UCLA with Deshaun Foster, I think he gets more of a grace period. My understanding is that the UCLA alumni and that brain trust, they are going to try to make a run at this, be competitive with the NIL, and try to actually be a program that matters. But I'm telling you, Nico Iamaleava is going to find out he didn't have it so bad at Tennessee. That UCLA offensive line is not very good. I don't think they have the weapons that he needs. And can we be honest about Nico, Dave? He wasn't really good last year at Tennessee. He wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
So I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, Dave, if UCLA and USC are just going to be middle of the road or really bottom dwelling Big Ten teams, right? Dave, I really think the West Coast, and again, I'm not counting Oregon, they're in the Northwest, but Dave, in terms of our region here, we may not actually have a college football scene that matters. That's scary.
That's the direction it's headed. And you brought up my Oregon Ducks, Steve. Of course, losing Dylan Gabriel and then Bo Nix the year before that, but they're still ranked number 3 in the country, loaded again with a good recruiting class, and now from what I'm reading, they love Dante Moore, the transfer who was a 5-star recruit when he went to UCLA, transferred to the Ducks, and they love what he's doing up there. They think he's going to have a great year in the Dan Lanning offense.
Dave, I thought the best thing they did, and I thought, I remember when Dante went to UCLA, he was pressed into duty as a true freshman, and he showed flashes, but it was really clear that outside the RPO game, he really should have been redshirted then. And I remember watching the Utah game where they set on the first RPO, and there was a pick 6. And then this play came to a point like, all right, we got to sit him out a little bit. The ability that Oregon had last year to basically give him that redshirt year, let him learn. I expect to see a better version of Dante Moore. And athletically and physically, he is a superior athlete than Dylan Gabriel. Now, Gabriel was a consummate college quarterback, got the ball off on time. He knew where to go with it. He could run a little bit, and he was incredibly productive. That's what's going to be interesting. How much has Dante grown in this off season? And I don't expect Oregon to really struggle that much. Dan Lanning is an elite coach, in my view. And if Dante Moore is that guy, he could do certain things with that football that I don't think Dylan Gabriel could do. But again, that doesn't necessarily make him a better quarterback just on that alone.
And the Arch Manning era begins at Texas. And I saw him interviewed the other day. They're talking Heisman Trophy, being the number 1 pick in the draft. And he said, hold on, wait a minute. He said, I've started 2 games. I haven't done anything. Can I at least go on the field and so that I can play before we start talking that way?
And Dave, they have a pretty easy game in week 1. Ohio State.
At Ohio State, yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, so Dave, I like that answer because, Dave, I'm watching all these NFL mock drafts, right? And they have Lenoris Sellers, who's an unbelievable athlete, but still very raw throwing the ball, right? And then they have Arch Manning in the top 5, and I'm thinking, guys, have we learned nothing from Anthony Richardson? First of all, there's a theory, Dave, that for quarterbacks to really succeed or succeed quickly, they need to have at least 35 or 30 to 35 starts under their belt, right? Arch Manning has started twice.
Yeah.
Lorno Marcellus has only started about 12 to 13 games. What? I don't know why we're rushing the process with these guys.
You know, Steve, there's another one on the way. I was watching some YouTube highlights the other day. Marshall Manning, he's the son of Peyton. He's 14 years old. He's playing in middle school right now. He's a starting quarterback. He was slinging it all over the field, on time, deep throws downfield. Another one's coming, Steve. The Marshall Manning era in about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that DNA is strong over there. And the thing with Arch is, I want to see one thing. Here's the thing about Arch. People have to understand. His father, Cooper, was actually a really good athlete. He was a wide receiver.
Yes.
So he can actually run. The question becomes, can he hit the routine passes over and over again? That to me is 80% of quarterbacking. We know he's more athletic, but people are now going to game plan for him, and there's a little bit of tape out there. So I know Ohio State lost a ton, especially defensively, to the next level. But
still ranked number
Dave,
1.
That's still Ohio State, and that's still at the Horseshoe. That's a tough road trip to begin your career.
Oh boy, Steve, let's talk some NFL in the minutes we have left. I know you're a fan as well as I am. Let's start with the Rams and the Raiders here, the two most popular teams in LA. With all apologies to the Los Angeles Chargers. Boy, I like this Rams team. I think they're a real Super Bowl threat. Sean McVay is a very good head coach. You still have Matthew Stafford. You have a good receiving core, good defense, and the last 2 years they've been close. I think they are legit Super Bowl contenders.
Dave, the only team that really troubled the Eagles last year in the postseason was the Rams.
They almost beat them on the road.
Right. And if you look at the Rams, I have to give Les Snead a lot of credit. To replace an Aaron Donald, you think would take a whole generation, right? Because those guys come along once in a lifetime. He truly was a generational first ballot Hall of Famer. And to just hit on the draft the way they did with those two guys from Florida State was amazing. And they didn't miss a beat. And coming into the offseason, I heard all this talk that Matthew Stafford may or may not stick with the Rams. I didn't understand it from both ends. Number one, Stafford still has a lot of life left. It's still a lot of gas tank remaining, right? The odometer's not hitting E. And if you're Matthew Stafford, why would you want to leave McVay? These guys have elevated your career to where you're now probably a Hall of Famer, and I felt that they needed to find a way to finish this thing out together. They drafted a very lively young running back in Jarquez Hunter, who I know McVay liked. Dave, if Puka Nacua stays healthy, that's a double-digit win team that's going to be a very tough out coming into January.
Now, how about the Raiders? Not a lot of talent on that team, but Pete Carroll coming in as a head coach, I think is a positive. They're getting an outstanding head coach here. And Ashton Shante might have been the best running back in the draft, Steve. He reminds me a lot of Barry Sanders, built low to the ground, short, fast. The first guy never gets him off his feet. He always gets past the first guy. He has explosive speed. I thought that was a great pick, and he's really going to help this Raiders team. Now, are they a playoff team? I'm not so sure.
I think they'll be markedly better. And Dave, you know what Pete Carroll gives you? Credibility and professionalism. That franchise has always kind of been a state of flux, and they have a Hall of Fame to be tight end, Brock Bowers, if he stays healthy. They have some parts, right? And I think the quarterback situation has been improved from what it was, right? So look, if they could somehow play right around 500 football and create some momentum. And I've always thought Pete Carroll acted younger than he has, than his age, because he has a very good energy, very enthusiastic. Yeah. So, look, if they can get to 7 to 9 wins, Dave, I would consider that a very good first step in the Pete Carroll era.
What do you think about their quarterback situation?
Well, right now it's Geno Smith, right?
Yep.
I think he's an upgrade.
Definitely.
I mean, Gardner Minshew is a very good backup. With Derek Carr, you had gotten as far as you could with him. And look, is Geno Smith elite? No. But has he been solid and serviceable? And I think and does Pete Carroll have familiarity with them? Obviously he does. So for the time being, he may not be the quarterback of your future, Dave, but I think he's a pretty good quarterback of the present.
Now, the Chargers, you know how I feel about Jim Harbaugh. What a great coach, Steve. Everywhere he's gone, it's been a fast turnaround. University of San Diego, then he takes over an 0-12 Stanford team, and within a couple of years has them in the top 5, knocking on the door for a national championship. Goes to the 49ers, takes over a 5-11 team, and has them in the NFC Championship game in his first year, and then the Super Bowl. And Michigan, he wins a national championship. I said when he took this job, Steve, within 5 years, he'll be in the Super Bowl. That's what he does. Within 5 years of taking the job. Yeah, maybe sooner.
How about 3?
Yep.
Dave, I want to say something right now that may absolutely flabbergast some of your listeners and readers and all that. I think he's one of the greatest coaches of all time.
I agree.
The job he did at Stanford, where they did not bend academically at all, and they didn't really do a lot of transfer stuff. There was no portal back then, and Stanford's academics are incredibly tough, right? It's basically Ivy League standards, and you're trying to play Division I football, and the Pac-10 was a solid conference back then. I think he had them number 2 or 3 as last year when they blew out a pretty solid Virginia Tech team in the Orange Bowl.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, wow, they were one bad half away against Oregon early in that year of playing for the national title. I said, that to me is a national title right there for Stanford, right? You go to San Francisco, he rescues the career of Alex Smith. They're on the verge of going to the Super Bowl his first year. They went to 3 NFC championship games. And if they would have given the ball to Frank Gore late against Baltimore, they probably win that game. And you saw what he did at Michigan, and I get it. Their advanced scouting was very good. I'm not going to overlook that. But, Dave, look at that. Tell me a guy that's been as good a coach as he's been the last 12 to 15 years. You know,
his greatest win ever, he took over an 0-12 Stanford team. His first year, they were 43-point underdogs going down to play a number 1 ranked USC team in the Coliseum, and he won the game. That can't happen. That was unbelievable.
That was 2007 with Tavita Pritchard, and on that team was a wide receiver by the name of Richard Sherman, by the way.
Yeah.
And I remember in 2009, they went back up to the Coliseum, that he basically ended the Pete Carroll era. They Toby Gerhardt, they just ramrod. They absolutely brutalized them physically, and he put up a 50 spot on them. I'm just going to tell you this right now. Captain Pleats can flat out coach. And the next step for Justin Herbert now, because he's put up a lot of numbers, he's got to become a winning quarterback, Dave. That's where Herbert puts up great numbers, but Dave, I don't know if he's a winning quarterback to the degree that I think it should be expected of him.
Remember, Stanford was blowing out USC in 2009 at the Coliseum. They had 48 points, and he went in the last minute. He went for 2, going for 50, and he and Pete Carroll almost got into a fist fight at midfield after the game.
What was your problem? What's your problem?
I loved it.
And that was great. I mean, he gave Stanford an identity. And I know a lot of people say David Shaw did a great job. Yeah, but half of that credit, in my view, has to go to Harbaugh. Now, look, Harbaugh last year, he took the Chargers to the playoffs. I think he was a markedly better leader and a head coach than Brandon Staley, who coached his way out of a lot of wins. Now the next step is for Justin Herbert or Jason Herbert or Justin. You got to start winning some close games here. I don't think he's been a great clutch time quarterback. That's the next step.
I'm a huge fan of Dan Campbell. I loved his first press conference when the Lions were awful. He said, we're going to bite people's kneecaps off, and I'm going to bring a real lion to the facility. I'm going to walk him with a leash around the practice field for inspiration to the players to get them to play hard. I said, I love this guy. He's a hard ass. He turned it around right away. Has the window closed for them, though, Steve? They had a 24-7 lead at halftime over the 49ers with a chance to get to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Last year, they had home field advantage all the way through the playoffs and got blown out by the Commanders. Has the window closed? You think they can get to the Super Bowl now? They still have a very good team.
They do. They have a great general manager in Brad Holmes. But here's the issue, though, Dave. I don't know the last time a team replaced 2 coordinators and went back to a Super Bowl. Aaron Glenn's now running his own team, as is Ben Johnson. But in defense of Dan Campbell last year, Dave, that defense just decimated by injuries, and it all started with Aiden Hutchinson, who looked like he was going to be the MVP defensively. When he broke his leg or snapped it in half against Dallas, you got the sense this is going to be tough to overcome. And then they lost Aleem McNeil, who gave them a really good inside pass rush. So that's 2 all-pro level guys. Then the back 7 got decimated a little bit, and then they had to really win a lot of high-scoring games, and then they got ran off the field by Jaden Daniels in Washington. The talent is there. They still have a really good foundation, but Dave, you're absolutely right. Sometimes you don't even realize the window is closed till the window is closed. And I just wonder, do they have an offensive coordinator now that can replicate the magic of Ben Johnson? I have my doubts.
Yep.
Seeing is believing.
I got to give you a lot of credit here, Steve. You told me before they came into the NFL, you said you thought Jaden Daniels was better than Caleb Williams, which almost nobody agreed with. And you turned out to be 100% correct last year. Jaden Daniels was so good with the Commanders. But a caveat on that, I think that Caleb was getting some awful coaching in Chicago. I think Ben Johnson, coaching him now, I still love Caleb and his ability. I think this year is going to be a coming out party. I still think he can be a great NFL quarterback with the right coach now.
Yeah, and look, having Cliff Kingsbury has to be an advantage for Jaden Daniels, right? And here's the issue, though, Dave, and I love Ben Johnson. I know Jared Goff is not thought of as an elite quarterback, but one thing he can do that not a lot of modern-day quarterbacks have the ability is to play directly under center. Because if you can do that, now that gives you a downhill running game, which certainly Detroit had, but more than that, it gives you a play-action capability. You can't really get that out of a shotgun or even out of a pistol. And Jared Goff is one of those few guys that can do that. And generally, when he's at his best, he plays on time. He doesn't scramble, doesn't run. Extending the play is not really his forte. He's very limited athletically. Can and will Caleb Williams play under structure or on time consistently?
Yep.
See, that's the whole question. And that's where he's going to have to mature and understand at the NFL level. Dave, 90% of the time, that ball has to get out in 2.5 seconds.
Absolutely.
And if you can't do that, you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball.
And there's no excuses now. He's got the right coach. He's got a brilliant offensive mind in Ben Johnson. He's got to step up this year, and I think he will. Steve, how about the Chiefs? When you talk about window closing, certainly they're still one of the best teams in the National Football League. They got blown out in the Super Bowl by the Eagles. They're not getting any younger. Is this the year they don't get back and don't come out of the AFC?
Dave, this is I don't want to call it a backhanded compliment or something, but weren't they the worst 13-14 win team you ever saw last year?
I never thought they were the best team talent-wise in the NFL in any of the Super Bowl years, but they've got the hammer. They've got the guy at quarterback who can pull games out. If he's got the ball in the last couple of minutes, he's going to win the game for you.
Yeah, but Dave, think about this. When was the last time Mahomes was really pushing the ball down the field all the time?
While.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Looks like he's been pushing a lot of food down his throat. Have you seen his pictures lately?
Yeah. Well, yeah, look, he's never been Mr. Universe. Lee Haney, he's not, or Flex Wheeler.
Yeah.
But Dave, they do a lot of dink and dunk, and they have a way of managing the game. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I remember even last year when they were 10-0, I kept thinking they could easily be 7-5 right now. If you look at all their one possession games, they found a way to win it. And there's always this theory that the referees always give them a little bit of a break because it's Patrick Mahomes. I just get the sense that they're going to have to retool that offense. And I know they did some things. They're getting Rashee Rice back. And Xavier Worthy looks like he's going to be a deep threat, if not an every down possession receiver. But I forget winning a Super Bowl because they've already done that. So has Mahomes. Can Mahomes go back to being a guy that can absolutely throw the ball downfield and stretch it? Because if you really examine what they've done offensively, it's not the offense that came bursting out of the cannon in 2018, 19, and 20.
And speaking of windows closing, how many times can the Bills knock on the door with Josh Allen and get to the championship game and not get across? I mean, at some point, it's going to be too late for them.
Dave, I'm going to say this right now. I love Josh Allen. They're not getting him a lot of help. Andre Reed ain't walking through that door.
Or James
Eric
Lofton.
Mold, Peerless Price ain't walking through. I don't look. I know the Buffalo GM has been very combative when asked about the outside talent, but Dave, I get it. The Chiefs have kind of done it post Tyreek Hill, but if Josh Allen is my franchise, which he is, don't you need to get him a true number one at a certain point, Dave?
You would think so, wouldn't you? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, look, I look back 2-3 years ago when they had They had the lead with about, 11 seconds against the Chiefs, and they didn't squib the ball. I think that play will haunt them for a very long time, and it has.
You look at the Eagles here, Steve. Now, Jalen Hurts is such a great story. Comes out of high school, goes to Alabama. He won a national championship, but he wasn't a great thrower. He really wasn't a good passer. I didn't see a future for him in the National Football League. Then he loses his job to Tua, then goes to Oklahoma and improves, but he has improved by leaps and bounds. It's a tribute to his work ethic, how much he's improved. And now he's a Super Bowl champion and an elite quarterback. But I read some stuff this week, Steve, I thought was really unfair to him. And the article was saying, well, do they win in spite of him? Do they win because of his teammates? It's not really because of him. I think that's a real slight to Jalen.
It is to a certain degree, but Dave, we have to be honest. That's an unbelievable offensive line, great running game. And, when you have Saquon Barkley, it makes things easier. But I would also say in defense of Jalen, he fits their system perfectly and he runs it. Look, not every team can do that tush push. Not every quarterback is built physically that well or tough enough to do that. Look, the Buffalo Bills couldn't execute a quarterback sneak last year and probably cost them a Super Bowl run, right?
Yep.
Against the Chiefs. So not every quarterback can play in that system and sacrifice and subjugate his own game. And I look at Jalen Hurts as a guy, he's better than the numbers indicate. But at the same time, is he in a perfect system?
Yes.
Yeah. So both things can be true there.
I love the fact that the league decided to keep the brotherly shove. I love that play. You made a good point. Other teams have tried it, and they don't have that kind of success because their offensive line isn't as good, and they don't have a quarterback who can leg press 900 pounds.
Right.
The way Jalen Hurts does. You know what? Quit whining about it. Quit crying about it. Stop it. I think it's really soft to go to the league and make a rule against a play that you can't stop. Figure out a way to stop it, for God's sake.
Yeah, I don't think there's any team that should be penalized for being unbelievably good at something that's theoretically
coming up with a great play. Yeah.
Right, that everyone else can do. But the thing with the Eagles that's interesting is Howie Roseman is no doubt an elite executive. They let go a lot of frontline talent defensively. Is it going to be easy to reload? Now, look, they know how to manage the salary cap, but you look at their offense, man, they have a lot. They have two number one receivers and a guy that could take the top off the defense. Good, solid tight end. And Saquon Barkley looks like he's headed to the Hall of Fame for another great year or two. They're going to be tough. It'll be interesting, though, because as much as dominant as they were last year, they did let go and they made some financial decisions up front defensively. Now, if they get banged up, they're not going to have quite the same depth that they did last year. Keep that in mind.
And that reverse hurdle that he did backwards, unbelievable. That reminded me, Steve, of the time I criticized Magic Johnson in front of Joe McDonnell, and he came after me, and I did that reverse hurdle over you, trying to get out the door that night.
Yeah, I mean, and God bless you that you were just a step or two faster than Big Joe.
And he had incredible speed. What an athlete, huh?
But what a burst. The word I would use is twitchy.
Joe McDonnell, Doug Kokorin used to say on the air, L.A. is the most eligible bachelor. Big Joe McDonnell. Hey, Steve, before we let you go, real quick, you want to make an early prediction? Who's going to win the national championship and who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I tell you a team that I like a lot. And top to bottom, I think they're loaded with NFL talent. And I think a team that'll be at least in the Final Four. I really like Clemson.
Oh, bouncing back. Okay.
A lot. Yes,
yep.
I think Dabo Swinney is alive and well. He's actually going into the transfer portal here and there. They got a frontline quarterback. At every position, they have at least one or two NFL prospects. Maybe the best defensive line in all of college football.
LSU in week one. Yep.
Yeah, and they play LSU. Clemson is really good. Dave, Penn State's interesting to me because I think they finally have some help outside in terms of the wide receiver unit. But, again, James Franklin has still yet to win what I'd call a really big game. So I would say the only team that I really am putting them in the Final Four with ink right now is Clemson. I'm still trying to figure out who else I like.
Who do you like in the NFL? Eagles, the odds-on favorite in Vegas. The Eagles and who else?
It's so tough to repeat that just based on that, I think I would bet on the field. But the Eagles, if they stay healthy, still have a very good team. Boy, I'd have to think about who I like.
I like the Rams, Steve.
Yeah, the Rams are trending upwards. That is a team. And by the way, I want to see if there's a sophomore slump for Jaden Daniels. Because if there isn't, that's a pretty good roster there, Dave.
Great stuff, Steve. I know you got to go. I appreciate you coming on here again. It's funny. Like, whenever you would come on back in the day, I'd say, here, Steve Kim coming on the show. We're going to talk boxing, all the big fights coming up. And then the interview would finish, and then Doug Fisher would call me. And he'd say, why do you always bring Steve on? Say you're going to talk boxing, and then all you do is talk about the Lakers and college football. You never get to boxing. It was the same way here.
No, it is. But, look, here's the thing. The timing isn't right. And, look, there's plenty of time to talk boxing, Dave. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. There he goes. The great Steve Kim, part 2 with Dave Smith here at Dave Smith Unleashed. And don't forget, we're giving away 4 tickets to the Rams-Cowboys game coming up on August 9th. But you have to subscribe, you have to like, and you have to comment on the YouTube page. And we're going to pick a winner here August 9th. 4 seats right over the tunnel where the Rams come out. And in my opinion, this year's Super Bowl Los Angeles Rams coming out of the tunnel. So, and if you want to know when Dave Smith Unleashed is going to be broadcast, what time I'm going to be on, who the guests are, go to my Twitter page at Dave Sports God, at Dave Sports God. We'll talk to you next time right here on Dave Smith Unleashed.